Hey everyone, welcome to our small footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a family of 8 who live off-grid in Australia. Today is Sunday, and on Sundays I generally do a chat video. So we're getting a bit of a twofer today because I said I would do a bit of a Q&A. So I asked some questions and I got them. So there's a couple of things to run through, and because it might take a while, it might be taken in a couple of different places throughout today, and it's going to be out later than normal for today. But I had yesterday off, so yesterday was Saturday for me. I didn't film, I filmed what we ate so that I could do a what we eat in a video, what we eat in a week video, but other than that I didn't film anything, didn't do any voiceovers, nothing. So I had a free day yesterday, which means that I'm on a little bit of a catch up because I never get particularly far ahead on my videos, unfortunately, because I'm doing what we do each day rather than specifically making videos. So today, Sunday, we've just finished the daily prep. There probably could have been one more video that I did that I could have put up a day 10, but I decided to hold off and I'll put it up with something else because I just needed a bit of a break, to be honest. So we did that. So it works out to be about 10 days of prep post the groceries, I think. So that's what we'll aim for, is about 10 days of daily videos post the grocery haul. Each time I do it. It looks like the next one will be around about the week of the 22nd of March. So that's when I'll do that. What else? So there was a couple of things I wanted to talk to you guys about. The Q&A, so I will get to that as well, answering some of those questions, which all come as part and parcel of it all anyway. But I have had a request from a few people to start up like a Patreon or something like that. And I was looking at Patreon today and looking at setting it up and things like that. I was hesitant because I was unsure about how much value I could add to something like Patreon. Like, I know that people want to support me and I'm super baffled by it, to be honest, but super, grateful for everyone who wants to help support. But I wanted to make sure that there was value added to it. And what I thought was that because I can't get this website up and running in a decent amount of time, because it just requires a lot of extra work, I am going to get it going though, because it gives me another searchable sideline that is great for the business. So I suppose what it comes down to is the fact that I have to start thinking, like, yes, I do YouTube to earn some money, of course. It's a lot of work to not. But I started YouTube partly to document, partly to create a community, partly to meet people and things like that. And the income in it has been great. So I'll get a bit more in depth of that. With one of the questions was asked about, the expectations, or maybe I just do it here and then we'll come back to it. So one of the questions I got asked, I have notes here, so you'll just have to excuse me for a second. Someone asked, what was the words? They asked, was I surprised by the reaction to the channel? Very. So when I first started, the initial videos that I did were done as Vlogmas. They were daily videos over the span of December, and partly I did that because we had discussed starting something ages ago. We had the Facebook page and we discussed starting more sharing and things like that, and never got around to it. Darryl was going to do it and then he didn't, and he went off on different avenues and things like that. So what I had been doing is I watched a lot of YouTube, because I watch a lot of YouTube, as most of us do, and there was a lady who has a channel, I think it's called Our Tribe of Mine, and I, for some reason, cannot think of her first name, and yet I can remember her husband's name. Her husband's name is Solo, and they have, I think, maybe 11 children at the moment, and she was talking about how she started, and how she basically just grabbed a phone and she's vlogged every day without fail, told herself that she was going to give herself a timeline, and she was going to see how it went. So basically, that's what I did. I decided that I would start with Vlogmas. I would give myself 12 months. Initially, I would try doing it daily. That obviously didn't quite work all the way through. There was a lot of 2 and 3 day gaps as well. But I would really push for that 12 months and see where I was at. See whether it was a sustainable thing that it could be added on as a business option, as an income earning potential for the work, because it's more work. It's something alongside of everything else we do, and it's time spent that could potentially be spent doing something else that may bring income into the family. So there was like this assessment of giving myself 12 months and deciding how I was going. So my 12-month mark was the end of November, 30th of November last year. and I had 5,000 subs, I think, by that point. And so I went, well, I think this is worthwhile continuing. That was my standpoint. So I have been very shocked at the responses. The channel has done really well. The niche of the channel has evolved into its own. Like, I don't think I ever thought at the beginning that most of my videos would be my camera pointed at the kitchen bench and me voiceovering them. I don't think that was ever something that I contemplated as potential, but obviously it's what I do and what I do well, and so it gives me content without creating more work for myself other than the actual, editing and all the rest of it. But my big thing was I didn't want to have to set things up to create video. I didn't want to have to spend more time thinking about what my video content was going to be and how I was going to create it than actually creating it and doing other things on the side. So it naturally evolved into being mostly my camera pointed at my kitchen bench with me chatting and voiceovers and bits and pieces of other stuff as we go along, bits and pieces of the solar, grey water, growing, garden. I did expect the garden to be much bigger element this year because last year my garden was massive and it took up so much time and I was harvesting hundreds of kilos of vegetables. I really expected that to be a large aspect of the channel as well. But as anyone who's been around knows, the garden this year was just nothing. There was nothing. So yes, the garden has not featured, and hopefully in the next few it will feature, like over the years it will feature more because I will do better and therefore I will have more to share. But I was very surprised. So it took me only 4 months to be monetized. So to be monetized on YouTube, you have to have 4,000 watch hours and 1,000 subscribers. So from the 30th of November when I started, it took me 4 months to get to that point, and that was flabbergasting. That was just amazing. I expected to need that 12 months to get anywhere near that point, and it was amazing. So once I got monetized, the money is not huge, and we can go over that in another video, what you earn, but it's not huge for the amount of hours that are put in, but it gives you something. You sit there and you go, well, if I'm doing this with this much, then imagine what I could do with this much, and it's worth putting that bit of effort in. And then from that point, it's grown hugely. Now, I did get featured in a couple of news articles at one point, and whilst the people who commented most, it got me a lot of audience, and whilst the people who commented, who actually came to the channel to comment, were all positive, the comments on Facebook and that where the articles were advertised was pretty horrendous, mostly because they didn't actually look at anything but the article, and the article's only glossing. So there was a lot of comments about my weight, a lot of comments about how that I must be buying all processed foods and all this sort of stuff. So obviously just people who hadn't looked any further than the article. And it was hard, but basically what I did was I read the first few comments, looked at it and went, yeah, I don't want to read any more of this. And I didn't. So I got a few highlights from friends who were reading the comments for me, not for me, but because they, wanted to read them and see what was being said. But I didn't go back. After the first half a dozen comments I saw, that was it. That was enough. I didn't need to see anything else. I didn't need to be impacted by the negative people who were on those things. So yes, massively surprised by the way that the channel has grown. Massively surprised by the sheer positivity that most people put across. My mum watches the videos in bulk, so she works full time, so every now and again on a weekend she'll sit there and just watch half a dozen of them, but I think she far more enjoys reading the comments than she does actually watching the videos. She loves seeing the kids in the videos, but she mostly loves the comments, and she rings me regularly and just says, have you seen these comments? It's so lovely, and all the rest of it, and it is, and it's wonderful. So leading on to that too, what I was saying before about the Patreon and stuff is that as the channel grows, there's going to be less opportunity for me to be as personalized with the comments, and that's just going to happen organically. At the moment, I answer every comment, I read every comment, but even now, it used to be there wouldn't be much of a delay before leaving one and me commenting, and even at this point now, sometimes it's the next day before I get to go and read through them all. So I tend to get up in the morning, first thing in the morning, I'll sit in front of the computer with a coffee, and then I'll go through and answer any comments that came in overnight and that I missed the night before and things like that. But it's taking me longer and longer to do it. I still am going to continue to do that for as long as I can. I'm not interested in getting a third party to answer the comments because that's pointless. So like, I know a lot of people have other people who come in and answer all the comments. I'll always read them all, I'll always heart them all, but it's going to come to a point where I'm not going to be able to answer them all, or not in any significant way. Like, I say thank you to every comment as well. Like, it's rare that there is a comment that is not commented on, that I do not reply to, because you guys have spent the time to comment, so I feel like you deserve my time to comment back. But we all know that eventually that's going to struggle. I'm out in my new seed staging area, which I'll show you in a minute, but it's much cooler in here than it is out there, but it's still pretty warm. So that leads to the Patreon thing. So people have been asking me if I would set up a Patreon, and then you can, so Patreon is a monthly subscription type thing. So people already buy me a coffee through Buy Me a Coffee, and thank you very much. I always forget I need to mention people when they do that. But with Patreon, it's like a monthly subscription, and you get perks. So the perks can be whatever the person offers. And I was thinking about it and thinking about the fact that I could easily do little PDFs up of some of these recipes that I should be sharing on the website, which I just haven't got there, and I could share them in places like Patreon and stuff. But also, it'd be a slightly smaller audience because people are paying to be in that audience, and everyone's not going to pay it. Either people can't afford it, or people have no interest in adding in that value addition to it. So it could be a bit more of a smaller audience so that I would have more opportunity to answer people properly. But I could also potentially do far more regular Q&As, because I can already see that I've been standing here and I've basically answered one question, and my camera is sitting at 13 minutes worth of video. So there's no way that I'm going to be able to cover everything in a video either. But as much as I want to make these videos for you guys, they are for my current audience. These videos will not draw a particularly large crowd from the rest of YouTube. So there is better videos that would do me more benefit on YouTube than answering Q&A type questions, sort of thing, if that makes sense. So whilst I'm going to blog and stuff eventually once I can get the website going, the plan... Oh, sorry, there was a dog. The thought also was that I could have something like a Patreon where people could join and we could have more personalized contact, I suppose, is the idea. But I could also release some of the recipes and stuff in places that are easier to find before I get the website going. Now, Patreon has quite a significant charge, because I looked at it last night. Patreon has quite a significant charge to me. So I put a price up, and the people who choose to join at a set price point per month. I have no idea what that would be. You can start it at 5, 10, 15, whatever, and you can have different tiers. So maybe give me any feedback in the comments about that, what you think that I could do there. Now, the only thing, as I said, Patreon has some significant fees. It is 8% charged per month, plus a 3% and 30-cent charge per payment, so you're talking 11% and 30 cents. That's quite a significant charge. I did notice that Buy Me a Coffee now has a membership option, so a group membership option, similar to Patreon, and they're always updating it, and it only charges the flat 5%, which is what it charges on the normal donations anyway. So what I was going to ask was your opinions on sort of what you would like to see included in something like that for it to be valuable to you. And the sort of price point, but also whether you'd be happy to go with something like the Buy Me a Coffee platform rather than the Patreon platform, because it would save me money in the end. Like it would mean that I would be receiving more of the money that you are supporting me with than otherwise, but it isn't the well-known name either. So just putting that out there for some feedback on that. If I could get some feedback on that, that would be superb. All right, so I have totally squirreled and tangented, which I knew I was going to do on this video. The but that gives you the outline of the basis of how I started the channel, and that I was shocked that it did so well, and I am superbly grateful for the audience, but that I feel like I can't quite service the audience as well as I should as I get larger. And whilst I want to get a bit bigger, because the more income I can make from the YouTube means that the more time I can put into it, the more I can put other things aside to come back to YouTube and give you more value. And that's what it comes to in the end, is that I enjoy it. I enjoy filming it. I enjoy I enjoy making new recipes and stuff and sharing them. But I have to have the time to be able to do that. And to have the time to be able to do that, I have to be earning enough income to do so. So it's one of those juggling points. It really is. So anyway, give me some feedback on that. The other thing, I suppose that sort of covers most of that, though I'll bring that to the next. One of the other questions that gets asked all the time is how we support ourselves whilst living off-grid. We are supremely lucky that we have very minimal overheads. So because we have very minimal overheads, we do not need to earn very much money to be comfortable. Our groceries are by far the largest expense ever. So that, that amount of money that we spend on groceries is the largest expense that we have. Everything else is less than. We pay rates, obviously, because we own the land. And I have a small debt that is part of the land payment as well as the car. But other than that, it's just living expenses, mobile bills and internet bills and things like that. Nothing. We don't pay electricity because we're solar only. We do pay for water that we collect from town, but it's only $2.24 or $2.30 per 1,000 litres. Obviously, we have fuel costs, but the grocery costs normally include the fuel cost as well for that particular time, and we don't drive that much otherwise. So basically we support ourselves using YouTube. Not that we earn a huge amount from YouTube, but it's, as I said, we don't need to earn a whole lot. Darryl is a writer, and he writes novel type stuff as well as some Dungeons and Dragons adventures, and he does virtual tabletop conversions for Dungeons and Dragons, so he does some contract work there. I do some contract work doing typing for financial advisors, that they send me the voice files, I type them out and I upload them to their servers. We take on any sort of contract work that becomes available and is convenient for us to do around the kids, basically. We do receive some money from the government because we have a large family and low income, so we do receive a top up from the government there as well, which helps. Every little bit helps because we have minimal overheads, and that's the big thing. Having the minimal overheads is the tipping point of being able to live this life or not. If we had to pay market rent or mortgages, no, there's no way we would survive. We would both be working full-time jobs, and the kids would be at school and all the rest of it, because that's the way you have to do it. So we always said that when we moved out here, we were swapping money for time. So we have very little disposable income, but we have everything we need. And we do manage to put bits and pieces away to do some big purchases, or I am very lucky that I have a few people that help me by lending me money on a short-term basis so that I can pay them back, because some of those big purchases are just so hard for us to do, to try and save a portion of money in a short period of time is quite difficult. Things like the structure for the pantry, that we just cannot seem to get the money together, but I need to pay off a few other things before I look at even thinking about borrowing from anyone. So that's the part of it. So I got sidetracked. So I'm pretty sure I answered the questions in full that I was answering, so that's cool, because it's been a couple of hours because I went and did lunch and stuff. So I had every intention of trying to make this video a bit more interesting, not me just standing somewhere doing it. I was going to try and get some of my seeds, because I'm in the new seed space, so I was going to try and get some seed trays filled and things like that. But I don't have a wide angle enough lens to be able to talk to you and to show what I'm doing, and it would just look really silly for me to be doing it at the moment without you actually watching what I'm doing. So just going to stand here and talk instead, and those who want to watch will, and those who don't won't. So I'm obviously not going to be able to cover all the questions in one video because I ramble, basically. But one of the other main questions that I get, and it sort of ties in with the whole how do we afford it and all the rest of it, is why we went off-grid, how we chose the property that we chose and things like that. I have answered it in parts, in bits and pieces through other videos as well, so if you've watched one of the others, you probably have some idea of what I'm going to say. But when we purchased this property, we owned 4 franchises, misdemeanor franchises, and I had the 6 kids at home. Kavik was under 2. And we bought a property with the intent for it to be a weekender, basically, with the hope that one day we'd have the ability to move off grid, like to move out here and live, but more in a very futuristic point in time. We were hoping to have, you know, money and resources and the ability to build what we wanted, and Darryl and I had researched that we really wanted a yurt. That was what we wanted to build, and then when we looked at it with the kids as well, we thought we'd build more than one yurt. We'd have like a cluster of yurts that have walkways between them and things like that, bedroom ones and kitchen ones, living ones, that sort of thing. But of course that's all quite a high cost, that sort of thing. So that was going to be our idea, but that was going to be in the distant future. We were going to continue working hard with the franchises and everything else, and getting money behind us and doing it that way. Now, we had a few issues. My health declined. I have trigeminal neuralgia, which is a degenerative nerve condition in my face. It's a chronic pain condition that you can take medication to assist with, but basically there is nothing you can do about it. There is the options of brain surgery. You're basically wrapping the nerve in Teflon, very simplified, but it only has like a, I don't know, like a 50% chance of working, and even if it does work, sometimes it only works for 12 months and then it all comes back, and it's not something I would risk. So I control it with medication, but at the time the medication that I was taking was really horrible. So I ended up in hospital quite a few times. And Darryl was struggling because of everything that was going on, and the kids and him working, you know, 60-70 hour weeks, and me not being well and all the rest of it. So things were falling apart a little bit. So we had bought this property with the idea of it being a weekender, and then our lives sort of just tumbled. One thing after another tumbled. The house that we were renting we had considered purchasing, but we couldn't get finance because we were self-employed, and then so that fell through, and then the owner wanted to rent it out to someone else. So then we had issues and we couldn't find new rentals because we had 6 kids and we were self-employed, and everything tumbled really badly. So what we ended up doing was we ended up handing the franchises back. They classified as selling them, but we made no profit from them because of the way it's structured. So basically we handed them back to the company. And we moved out here with nothing. So before we moved, when we were looking at it as a weekender, we did purchase some ex-mining buildings. They're called dongers, and they're basically similar to a shipping container, except that they have floors and they're built up and everything. And they were part of a larger structure from a mining site. So we purchased those and had them brought to the property. They didn't have walls, like there were some walls, there weren't others. I'll put a photo in here. But they did have sealed bedrooms on the end, so we put the kids in the bedrooms for sleeping, and then Darryl and I slept on a swag on the floor. Now, so basically everything happened in a cascade of events that we had not a lot of control over, and we didn't have a lot of control over the timing either. So we moved out here in June, in winter. Which was also difficult in the buildings that we had, and we made do. We made it work. Looking back at it now, I'm still glad that it happened, because if we had have waited till we were in a position to do it, we'd probably still be stuck not doing it. We'd still be stuck where we were instead of, you know, where we are. We'd still be working hard, trying to put money away and failing, because it doesn't seem to matter how much you earn, you spend it all, especially when you live metro and all the rest of it. So when we lived where we did, we were on a couple of acres, the place that we were renting and looking to buy, and it was on tank water, so we were used to that, but it was on the grid. And we did do a lot of our own I still did a lot from scratch, but we also had the convenience, had air fryers and things like that. So we had a mindset that was right for moving out here, but it was a big change. So when we selected the property, the intention wasn't to live on it full time straight away. So that just sort of, it adds to the when we chose the property question, like what were we looking for, what criteria were we looking for. To be honest, we weren't looking real hard. We just wanted property that was within our price range. So we looked online and found something that we wanted, and Darryl drove out to the block and then came home, and I said, if you're happy with it, that's cool. So I had never even seen the block before I came in here the first time after the buildings had been dropped off. So when we purchased it, it was sight unseen for me, but Darryl had seen it, so that's fine. And I didn't realise how far out from everything it was. I don't know that I'd change it if I went back now, because it was about being able to afford it as well, and it was cheap. But it is a little further out than I had realised, and we didn't realise that until the first time we drove out here. Until I drove out here, I didn't realise that. It's 20 acre block, and it's covered in bush. So we got one little 1,000 square metre patch cleared and a driveway, and then got the buildings put in a corner of it, and that's all we did before we moved in. So it was just clear sand in a section with the unfinished buildings and a driveway. That's what we started with. I really wish I had have taken up the YouTube way back then, because having proper record of it would be kind of nice, But anyway, so we moved out. We filled a couple of shipping containers, got the shipping containers moved out. That's how we moved most of our stuff. I did a lot of drives up and down the range in our old ute, carting stuff backwards and forwards. We put pool fencing up around the patio. We got a patio built too. So when we put the buildings in, we decided that it wasn't going to be anywhere near enough space for 8 people, so we got a patio built as well. And that has, if we didn't have that, things would never have worked as well as they have. So very grateful that we did that. And once we moved up, because the kids were so small, we used pool fencing in any gaps in the walls, and so they couldn't get out the back of the buildings, and around the patio so that they couldn't go anywhere as well. But that's about all we did initially, is just tried to get by. We had a ensuite tent that we were using with a camp shower. We didn't have a fireplace at first. We had to get the fireplace installed. We managed to buy one second hand for only $400. We were very lucky. And then we got that installed quite a couple of weeks after we moved out, which it was pretty gold. So that was great. So in regards to the questions I got asked, why we moved off grid, partly is because our lives were falling apart, pretty much. It was something we had always wanted to do, but it was supposed to be done with intent and purpose, and with funds and with planning and things like that. And instead, our lives snowballed and everything fell apart, and so we just did it because we didn't have a whole lot of choice. As I said, I'm kind of glad we did it now, because I could see that if we didn't do it then, we would have just been plodding along on and on and on, and not getting anywhere new, just doing what we were doing, and kept on saying, one day it'll be the right time, and never finding that one day. So I'm glad we did what we did. Now, there was intent, because we were doing it with some intent. I bought the business name, the Our Small Footprint business name, and I used Business Jump to set up a website that I no longer have. The intent at the time was the thought that they do marketplaces, so the idea was that we were going to have like a marketplace where I drew commission from selling things that we realized we needed off grid and other people might need, and things like that. But it never eventuated for me. It wasn't really going to work. It wasn't really what I wanted. The idea was that it could have earned us money while we were in this position, but I'm not very good at doing things I don't like, or finding time to do things that aren't really within my scope of enjoyment or of skill set or of future planning. I don't know quite how to say that, but some people will relate and some people won't. So that fell by the wayside, but I kept the business name and I kept it registered all the way through and used the Facebook and the Instagram. And then when I decided to do YouTube, I put it there as well. I considered changing it all. I didn't know if it really fit anymore, but everyone else said it still fit, so we kept it that way. So that's how we're known as what we are. So we did have intent. The theory was that when we moved off grid, we could run the website and things like that. But again, that was supposed to be in the distant future, not when it happened. So it didn't eventuate, and now we've got this going on, which is fine, which has worked out well. And I have to remember sometimes that myself and the name, our small footprint, and everything else, that is our business, that is our brand. I am our small footprint, our small footprint is us, and therefore everything we do can be put under that umbrella, and we can earn money in a myriad of ways using the concept of the brand, and that brand is what we're selling. It's such a horrible way to put it, but that's how it works. And I have to remember that sometimes, because we do need to make a living while we're out here. And so that's when people ask, the issues and what we might have done differently. I think a lot of the issues we had was because we didn't have a whole lot of choice about how it went down. We didn't have any money behind us, and we didn't have plans. So any issues that we had were there due to that. And realistically, would I have done anything different? No, because the theory of doing something different would mean that we would have had plans, and it would have been years in the future. We might have only been doing it now. So we're coming up to 5 years of living on this property, and we probably wouldn't have been doing it until now. 5 years of trying to work and everything else. And with everything that had been going on prior to us moving out, and me in hospital and Darryl struggling and all the businesses, having issues and everything else, once we got out here, things got better and worse. So once we got out here, life was simpler and less simple, all at the same time. And Darryl was no longer working for someone else and was no longer going to work 10 hours a day and all the rest of it, and he struggled. He had been struggling for a while, but he had had that push to go to work, that push to work for someone else, that push to earn a wage and all the rest of it. And then once we got out here, I always equate it to people who say that their children are they're going to bring their children into homeschooling. What they call it, they say that there's an unschooling period of time, a period of time where the children have to learn that someone isn't there to direct their every move, that they are allowed to lead their learning, and that they have to learn some autonomy for their tasks and completion dates and completion times and things like that. And it takes a while. The kids just want to do nothing for a long time because all of a sudden they've got this autonomy over their own time, and it takes a while for them to realize, hang on, maybe being bored all the time isn't great, and I would like to learn. I kind of equated that to Darryl when we moved out here, that he went from having this strict structure of when and where he had to go to work. Even though we owned the businesses, he still had to staff them, and we had half a dozen staff as well. So once he got out here, things slid a little bit. So he was already struggling before we moved, and then once we got out here, he slid a little further down that struggling way, and we always say that basically he had a mental breakdown. He had a stress-related mental breakdown. We look back on it now, and I always say that I look back on it now, and it was just part and parcel of the struggle of the move. It was just part and parcel of this new place and all the rest of it. He ended up seeing help for regularly, a couple of times a week for a while there, via telephone, via FaceTime therapy appointments and things like that. And we had a bunch of incidences where his anxiety just escalated and things like that. But at the time, it was just part and parcel of the day. We look back at it now, and we look back at how intense it was at the time, and how we're glad that we managed to get through it. And he always says that he is very grateful that I was there for him during that time. But that took us a couple of years to work our way through. I would say almost 3.5, 4 years, realistically. It has only been in the past 12 or 18 months that things have hit a little bit of an even stride. Prior to that, there was struggles in the everyday aspect of living off grid. And living off grid isn't easy, less so with 6 children. We always say, imagine how much more we could get done without the children around. But part of the reason for the move was for their benefit as well. So I don't know whether I've distinctly answered questions here or not, but editing this will be next to impossible, so I'm basically just going to allow my ramble to stand, and if I was talking to someone in person, this is how the ramble and the squirrel and the tangents would go, and that's how I treat all you guys anyway, is that you're someone I'm having a conversation with, and that's why I enjoy this aspect. It was really hard to begin with without an audience, because I was talking to a camera and not knowing if anyone was interested on the other side. Now that I know that people are interested, it makes it a hell of a lot easier to talk about stuff and discuss it. So that sort of only covered a couple of the questions. And I kind of felt like it was going to be a bit like that the Q&A, unless I did like an hour-long video, which I won't do because, man, imagine the squirrel trails I could go off in an hour. So this is sort of covering the initial part of it, and then I'm going to answer more of these questions as I go along. I might do at least one second video here that covers some of the really simple stuff, because these were the two big questions: how we support ourselves, how we pick the land, why we went off grid, and the issues and the things we might have done differently and things like that. And I think that what I've said covers most of that. There's small stuff, like when we set up structures, we put the pigs out the front of the property near the driveway. We should have put them out the back. Little things like that that will take time to amend, because we have to get the resources to do it. We need more roofing iron for fencing, and we need more fence posts, and timber has gone up in price, and like things like that. The garden structures, we started off really small and we've had to escalate them each year, and then this year has done nothing and we've got this giant space. And we put the fruit trees on the wrong side of the house. Initially they were on the western side of the house and they didn't get enough water and too much sun, so we've had to move them to the eastern side. Small things like that are just learning about the area that we live in mainly, but in regards to doing things differently on the move, we didn't have a whole lot of choice. And whilst that caused some problems, I feel like we would never have got here otherwise. And so I'm grateful to a degree that things snowballed into what they did because they forced our hand. And I think sometimes that when people talk about how they want to go off grid but they just don't know how they're going to do it and things like that, sometimes you've just got to take that leap and deal with the consequences. And we dealt with some of the consequences in regards to, like Darryl and I sleeping in a swag in negative temperatures and things like that. But we got there in the end, and the journey has been half the accomplishments. The journey has been part of the life. Like the things that we have accomplished have made our lives better. Not necessarily better in the scale of we live better, but better in the scale of understanding about our environment. Some of the failures that we've had, whether they're construction wise or garden wise or whatever else, have taught us about what we need to do better next time. And if you try and do things perfectly initially, like if you had the money and the structure and everything to do it, then you may not have the chance to have those failures, and therefore have those learning experiences. They're expenses too. And I come back to that whole progress, not perfection. So I'm going to put a screenshot in here too of I've finished handwriting the slogan, and I've got a mock-up of a mug, which I'm going to try and get a physical one done this week, but I've got a mock-up of it. So progress, not perfection. It's a really big thing. whilst I would love for things to be perfect, I would adore for our gates and doors to fit properly the first go, or for fencing on the chicken pens to have worked the first go, or, you know, anything like that. But at the same time, making progress forward without worrying about the perfection of it allows us to learn and allows us to accomplish more, because we're using less resources and less time to get it done. And yeah, okay, it's not perfect, but we can make other iterations of it and they can be more perfect than they were. But nothing is ever going to be perfect. We live in the middle of the Australian bush. It is dusty, dirty, smelly, and we have 6 kids in a small space, and, you know, we learn every day. And that's just the way it goes. So I hope that that has been interesting to listen to anyway. As I walk out of here, I'm going to show you this new shade structure. I might pull my phone out so it'll be slightly different footage, because it'll be easier than carting the main camera. I had said that, didn't I? I had intended to actually do some work out here while I was talking, but it just didn't, I couldn't get the camera in the right spot to do it. So, but anyone who's interested will be interested in the video, and anyone who isn't, it won't be, and that's fine. But as I said, that's part of the problem with YouTube too, is that my regular viewers will be interested in this video and will watch it, but people who have never seen me before, this won't interest them at all, and it won't draw any sort of an audience, I wouldn't think. So that's where we have the whole potential for the Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee memberships or whatever. We can do these sort of Q&As in short form, small, just one question video. I could just sit there and do a squirrel about one question sort of thing and put them up there a couple of times a week or a weekly or whatever, and answer them verbally rather than answering them in the comments, but just for the people who are actually interested in it. So again, let me know what you think about it all, and thank you very much for joining me again today. And for all those who like my squirreling, you'll probably really enjoy this video because I can barely remember what I've said in it because I've rambled so much, and I think it's like 30 minutes long. So if you can sit through my rambling for that long, then I congratulate you. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining me, and I will cover the rest of the questions. I have notes of all the questions written down. I didn't know quite how to make it work in a video, and without giving enough information. Like, I didn't want to just breeze through questions, because that doesn't work either, especially not the whole why and that. There is more to it than just a breeze through. So anyway, I'll leave it here, and I will see you on the next video. I'll wait for your feedback below before I move forward with anything else, and we'll go from there. All right, thanks guys for watching.